I created a terrible MLB team, but after steady improvement over their first 3 years, this could finally be the day the Alaska Polar Bears get out of the cellar. On paper, we've been about as bad as you would expect for a team that started with a roster full of scrubs, but even though it might sound crazy, I really think we could make a playoff push this year. The biggest reason for this is last season, we called up a lot of young players who still have not played a full year, and we saw guys like Forsyth, Griffin, Judd, and Avi Tick completely change this team, but there's still a lot of talent on the way. After a year of seasoning, former #1 pick LJ Morales will be an opening day starter, and then aside from him, our system is loaded with 15 top 100 prospects. Most importantly, all of this is following up a very nice 69-win season, so the future is certainly right now for the Alaska Polar Bears. If you haven't done so already, be sure to watch the first 2 parts of the series and then come right back, because this series is honestly different than anything else I've ever done because I'm allowing you guys to rename our draft picks. Up to this point, your guys' suggestions have been awesome, so please do keep them coming. And if you want to see every single name change, including the new ones I just added, check the description below. Spring training has become one of my favorite parts of these videos just because I love seeing what we have, but unlike previous years, I feel like this roster is pretty set. This is also our new ace Griffin Judd's first spring training because if you remember, we didn't call him up until after the season started. He was awesome as a rookie, but we need him to keep improving because without him, our rotation is certainly not good enough to make a playoff run. And here's another sophomore, William Trout, going deep. His older brother Randy was a legendary Portland pickle, so he's already a fan favorite as he was a late call-up last season, but made our offense even better, and Joe Adell makes it back-to-back dingers. Not only did we do that, but we did it off of George Kirby, so I really think if this one gets any crazier, the hype train is gonna go off the rails. I think the polar bear I was most disappointed in last season was certainly Tyler Locklear, and while he did make an all-star game, he went backwards the rest of the season, so I'm really counting on him and his power to come back. We have so much raw talent, but we're so young that the cards seem to always be stacked against us, so if we're gonna defy the odds and make the playoffs, that's gonna have to be a full team effort. However, shutting out our division rivals in spring training would be a big deal, and that's home run number 2 for Trout as it stays fair down the line. As you can see, off-season training with his brother and cousin Mike are paying off, and even though he showed it at the end of last season, I think he might be the real deal. It's also very interesting to see Joe Adell showing out so far because his spot's sort of in jeopardy with LJ Morales on his way to the show, so I don't know what we're gonna do with him, but that's a pretty good problem to have. Usually I'll play more than one spring training game, but clearly there is no reason for that because if the polar bears are gonna play like this, I'm going out on top. This may not be an official game, but it certainly sets a winning culture in Alaska, and with the offensive explosion, I have not even mentioned that we've only given up 2 hits up to this point in the game. I've seen enough to be very excited about our future, as our starting pitching and offense was undeniable. Here is our starting lineup entering season number 4, and while I'm very excited about our offense, I think our pitching is going to be a little more problematic. It is time for opening day, and we're up against the Toronto Blue Jays, and they are not a good team on paper, so this is a great chance to show our stuff. Griffin Judd was lights out in spring training, and even though he allowed 2 singles in a row, he makes up for it with a double play. That is going to put the ball in our offense's court, and there's no way that is the first pitch we see, and Dairon Blanco swings on it and belts it into right field. Welcome to Polar Bears Season 4 as he blazes that one 420 feet, and just like most of you, I really did not expect a Blanco home run to start it off. Despite some inconsistencies, this guy's become one of baseball's most electric players, but as you can see, his power is not really a strong suit. That is a very fun start, but Morales pops up his first at bat, so in inning number 2, Blanco's solo shot is our only hit of the game, but I spoke too soon, and Talieri's gonna go deep. Our second-year catcher turns on the inside fastball, and that is very good for him considering we brought in a bit of competition in Reclamation Project Corey Lee. If you're enjoying this video, please leave a like because the MLB offseason's so hard on creators like me, and as I'm saying that, Forsyth goes over the fence. That is a bit surprising because he is not normally known for power, but at the same time, he really worked on it last season. If you had the Dairon Blanco and the Forsyth home run on your parlay, you're now very, very rich because I never expected either of them, let alone both of them to homer, and they're making Judd's life very comfortable. I gotta give credit where it's due though, Griffin has held held it down despite getting lit up at times. And all things considered, so far so good, as finally an actual home run hitter goes deep. That is going to give us 5 runs on 4 dingers, and the only thing that can make this better is if LJ Morales adds another in his debut. I know the comments are going to be flooded with player name submissions, but also comment who your favorite polar bear is and why. But back to game action, Joe Adell just went deep. To be fair, that was an absolute meatball as they left a curveball right over the middle of the plate, and I promise you guys, I'm playing on Hall of Fame. Maybe it needs to go to legend. There's no other way to put it. This is a blowout, but before we end it, we're going to try to see LJ's first hit. This could easily be a big part of our history because Morales is 99 potential, and although he hits into a double play, that is going to score a run. This 11-2 victory is the best possible start to our year, and while our 5 home run performance may not be sustainable, our offense is certainly turning the corner. LJ Morales was the only player in our lineup who did not record a hit, so we're doing a player lock game with him, and right off the bat, he is gonna homer. How fitting is it that his first major league hit is a dinger, as he tied the game against Toronto, and now he's gonna do it again. 2 hits, 2 dingers for LJ Morales. Welcome to the show. I do not know how many times that has happened in MLB history, as both of his first 2 hits were home runs and made all the difference. I don't think it's too early to call us one of the best power hitting teams in all of baseball, and our offense helped us surge to a 6-2 record going into our first divisional series of the year, and the Angels will not tie it on our watch. That was an incredible throw from Blanco, and in a game like this, it might make the difference. Jensen's in a bit of trouble in the bottom of the 7th, and for once, we're the team that leaves the slider in the zone, as that is belted and they take the lead. Our pitching remains my biggest concern of the year, but I never expected those problems to come from our bullpen because it was one of the best units in baseball, and that went right to the first baseman. LA lucks into their second out, so it's fair to say we're in a bit of trouble going into the 9th inning. Now Jose Soriano is trying to close us out, and as you can tell, I hate going against this guy. We're off to a good start this year, but we need to win this series because unlike previous seasons, I feel like we actually have a chance to make the playoffs, so our division is very, very important. For now though, we're going to check out scouting for the first time this season, and as you can see, we're picking at number 2 overall, so unlike last year where my favorite 3 players went right in front of us, maybe we have a chance at a blue chip prospect. As far as position guys go, Orlando Mercado looks insane with that contact, but after having 3 generational prospects in last year's class, it looks like they're not going to reward us a single one this time around. Just a week after losing a series to Los Angeles, we have another series, so we need redemption in a very competitive AL West, but unfortunately, here is a double play. William Trout very well could have just choked this game away, but it's not over till the fat lady sings, because Locklear showed up at just the right time, and that should have been obliterated. Bobby just whiffed at a walk-off pitch, so after a walk, the tying and winning runs are on board, but this pop-up is gonna seal our fate, as the Angels simply have our number. I cannot express how much we need to overcome these struggles in the division if we want a chance, but on the bright side, here's our first round of scouting, and Orlando Mercado seems to be pretty good. So far, throughout this team's history, we've really just drafted based on need, so I'm going to continue to do that, because right now we have the number 1 farm system in all of baseball, and there's nobody who even comes close. As our farm keeps developing, I'm going to be looking to move to a brand new stadium, and I have no experience with stadium design, so this is where I'm asking for your guys' help. If any of you in the comments are genuinely good at stadium design and don't want to see this generic ski resort, please DM me on Instagram. You know you're a poverty franchise when your stadium's max capacity is the same as the Oakland Athletics average attendance, and it's really hard to celebrate great wins like this one with no fans. We officially rebound with a series win, and then to my amazement, just 2 games later, we put up 20 runs against the New York Mets, so our home field advantage is definitely real. After 3 weeks, we're on top of the AL West, and given that nearly our entire offense is on a hot streak, including LJ Morales, who's nearly batting 400, I am not surprised. Right now, the number 1 offense is a toss-up between us and the Cardinals, and I really thought that our ERA was going to be a lot worse than it is, as we're actually in the middle of the pack. Checking out scouting, I think I just found the number 1 player in the class in Greg Duke, and while it's not a shocker that he's number 1, I don't think I've ever seen a potential and an overall this high for a pitcher. There is no way he makes it past the number 1 pick, but then again, that's exactly what I said about Griffin Judd, and we are very lucky to have him. We're leading our division despite having a bit of a Mickey Mouse schedule, but now now we're being tested against the Brewers, and LJ Morales just went deep. I don't think there's any question this guy wins AL Rookie of the Year, but the question is, by how much? And last season I talked about our lack of a superstar, but we finally have him. Our lead did not last long though, as Milwaukee immediately tied it, so I'm begging our bullpen not to give this one away. This will turn into our first extra inning game of the year, and not long after hitting a 3-run shot, Morales gives us the lead again. Morales will be so mad if the bullpen sells him out yet again, but Avi Tick is not like other relievers, as our second-year closer gets the first strikeout. I know bullpen guys can be a little forgotten, but Avi Tick is trying his best to stay relevant, putting up a 0 ERA so far, and so far all this guy has done is strike people out. Now he just needs one more, but right on cue, that is dribbling right up the middle past Tick, and that will score the tying run. Every single time I try to glaze a player, he lets me down, so despite 4 RBIs from LJ Morales, we may lose this one, but here's a sac fly. We're giving Tick the second chance he deserves, and what a pitch, as we're right back in the same spot we were, but this time that's a swing and miss for strike 3, and the Polar Bears beat a playoff team. Not only is Morales the Rookie of the Year frontrunner, but if we scroll, he would also win the Hank Aaron along with the MVP if the season ended right now. That is completely absurd, as he's still only 19 years old and a long way from his ceiling. Despite all of these wins, the team that we mashed in spring training is right on our heels, so even after an amazing start, we are not being rewarded with any breathing room. To make things worse, all of this comes right in time for our first series of the season against the Astros, and William Trout just went deep. Home run number 11 ties him for the team lead with Morales, but shortly after, Houston's offense gets back into it, and very shortly after, MVP runner-up Yordan Alvarez puts them up 2. It is so frustrating because now that we have the firepower on offense, our bullpen's letting us down, because after William Trout took the lead for us, they rallied with 6 unanswered runs. I hate to say it, but we just got exposed by a better team, not once, but twice in a row, so our consistent trend of really only beating bad teams continues, and that's very concerning for our future. On the bright side though, I think I finally found a scouting gem in catcher Billy Schmidt, because as you can see, he is now ranked 48th in the class, and while a first round pick like LJ Morales or Griffin Judd are very important, these later round gems like Doug Forsyth and Avi Tick are really just as significant. This series against the Rangers could be make or break, because we're in danger of losing more and more ground to Seattle, but here we go, Bobby Dahlbeck at least tied it, and now the go-ahead runner is gonna score. After last week's showing against the Angels, I'm glad our offense came to play, and I don't want to jinx anything, but I feel pretty good about a 2-run lead with Griffin Judd on the mound, but immediately he's gonna get pulled. Now I'm honestly a little bit scared, especially because I had no idea they signed Vlad Jr. For the good of our season, we need Mike Baumann to lock in, and there we go, that's popped up, and if he somehow gets out of this, I'm giving him a statue. We're going for a changeup against a 1-2 count, and maybe that wasn't a good decision. Adele racing in from center field, and thankfully it's caught. There's a very good chance that just saved our bacon, but Doug Forsyth is gonna eliminate that doubt with a deep home run into straightaway center, and then Trout added another run, so we won by 5 runs, and Griffin Judd's race for the Cy Young Award continues. However, maybe the more interesting thing is William Trout and LJ Morales are both 1 and 2 for MVP, and to be completely honest with you, I didn't even realize that Trout was in the running for the award. Very quietly, Trout managed to pass him in home runs and total RBIs, so even though they were just drafted a few seasons ago, we have 2 superstars on offense. That's awesome, but right now, I'm more concerned about this series, as we've won each of the 2 games so far, and we're looking for the sweep. Trout put runners at the corners, and Dahlbeck's gonna deliver an opposite field shot. Stay fair, it is not going to. Bobby almost put them away, but he fought back to make it a full count and strikes out. You can't win them all, but I really want this one, and we do have a chance to end it with a 9th inning walk-off, but how about a double play instead? That means we're going to inning number 10, where Joe Barlow is still in the game, but maybe he shouldn't be because he gives up a run immediately. So now our backs are officially against the wall. There is already one away, and now Doug Forsyth flies out into right field, except it's still going back to the wall, and there is no way. That is home run number 11 on the year for Doug, who is definitely not a power hitter, but this time apparently that didn't matter because he just went to opposite field. We are now just 1 victory away from the sweep, and while we don't get it, Alaska has retaken the division lead. That is going to perfectly set us up for the most important series of the year against Seattle, and I want to show more scouting pitching, but right now I'm just trying to find later round prospects that I like. The number one player on my board is still Greg Duke, because unless he's injured, he's gonna come in with probably high 80s potential and a mid 80s overall, as he's a guy who could realistically start for us right away, but even if we don't get him, Eduardo Velasquez is guaranteed. Unless something crazy happens, I confirmed that we're taking a pitcher no matter what, but now my full focus is shifted to Seattle, who just took the lead in Game 1. We destroyed them in spring training, and I feel like they still have not let that go as our biggest rival. And the very interesting thing about them is they're built completely opposite of us with an amazing pitching staff, but if you've watched any Mariners baseball, you know this offense is nothing beyond average. Just for that reason, this would be a very interesting playoff matchup as they catch Forsyth stealing, so we lost our only base runner of the inning and Seattle's still ahead. We are well on our way to getting shut out by Blake Snell, but as you can see, we just got so lucky because that barely snuck through the infield, and now we tie it with the sacrifice bunt. That was the safest move after they pulled Blake Snell and put in Munoz. So for the first time in a few innings, this game is tied up, but not for long, as that changeup got left over the plate and Julio Rodriguez takes advantage. Just a minute ago, we were looking to walk it off, but now we're playing from behind, and the moment I thought the Mariners couldn't add any more pitching, they signed Ryan Helsley in the offseason, which makes this pretty interesting. A triple-digit fastball really changes things, and the fact they were able to shut down our offense is a bit concerning because that is our only strength. Don't get me wrong, there is so much to be excited about for our future, but at this current point in time, we are not quite good enough to consistently beat teams like Seattle, Texas, and even Houston. Good pitching is pretty easy to come by in the draft, but it takes years to develop, and since we're a low market team, the best we can do are kind of these see potential stopgap type of guys, so maybe if we see the right fit, we add another starter in a trade. I am very committed to winning this year, and I am not happy that Seattle just retook the division lead, and in Game 2, the Mariners have the lead and just extended it another run. Devin Smelter had only given up one run coming into this inning, but now he gives up 4 in a row, and while I am disappointed, you kind of get what you pay for. The very unfortunate reality of our situation is I really feel like we're not good enough to win the division, and after the very hot start that we had, I feel like it could be all downhill from here. Another tough loss to Seattle has me questioning this entire season, and it's not like we're doing bad, but a team with 2 MVP finalists and a Cy Young finalist should be pretty good. We just got swept by Seattle, so after leading in the division, we're back by 3 games. The Polar Bears' confidence is at an all-time low, so this is a very important rebound series against the Texas Rangers, and we just tied game number 2. For some reason, Texas has not been very good, and just from looking at their roster, I really fail to see why, as they are completely loaded at every single position. While I'm not complaining, they could catch fire as the season goes on, and if that happens, it's going to make winning our division even more complicated, so every single one of these wins counts. In the top of the 8th, we are neck and neck at 5 apiece, but here's MVP favorite William Trout. If you watched the Pickles series, then you know it took his brother Randy a much longer time to find his groove, but even though his brother was a top 5 draft pick, he is leaps and bounds ahead of him. On the other hand though, Tyler Locklear certainly has had a rough go the past couple seasons, but right now he's trying to make up for it, as this is going to drop in right field and score the go-ahead run. The bases are now loaded for Freddy Jr., and I'm actually faced with a pretty tough decision here. On one hand, we can go for the grand slam, but also he has a 73 bunt rating, so after weighing the options, I am going for the suicide squeeze, and my runners thought it was going to be caught, so they went back, and that was a bad move. With auto base running on, there was nothing I could have done about that, as my seemingly safe decision turned into an absolute nightmare. Because of that, our lead is only 1 run, but I believe we have a true secret weapon in closer Avi Tick. They just snuck one up the middle on him, but I have no reason to be concerned because he has an ERA and a whip under 1 and is the front runner for reliever of the year. I'm a bit more concerned after a walk, but honestly, the only reason he was struggling is because I didn't warm him up as we recover from the Mariners series with a sweep of our own. We're responsible for one of the most backwards divisions of all time, and just keeping it real here, I wish I could feel bad, but I kinda live for the chaos. Scouting has been very interesting this season, as I'm already done scouting first round prospects just because I know I'm taking one of these pitchers, so even though it's still pretty early in the cycle, I'm already looking for late round gems. Just a side note, one of the many things that I want MLB The Show to fix are all of these prospects who have higher overall than potential, because it doesn't make any sense to me that they would only regress at the major league level. I cannot even tell tell you how many good players this takes off my board every single year. And to be fair, I guess I understand why they do it, but if we're talking about realism, they're basically saying those players never have a chance to develop despite having a ton of raw talent, which doesn't make sense. We're now trying to win back our division against Seattle, but as you can see, our offense is completely dead, so we're really counting on a shutout from Griffin Judd. And while he's been good today, he just allowed a walk, and here's contact into the right center gap, Joe Adell going after it, and I'm so glad our outfield has range. It seems like every time they go balls deep, we're right on the receiving end of it. As I think in last episode, I compared Griffin Judd to George Kirby, but at this point, George wishes he was Griffin, as that's a nice catch. I am satisfied with that performance, but let's get another run. And after throwing at LJ, they're facing Trout. 2 MVP candidates is not what you want to see, and on the second pitch of the AB, Trout is gonna go deep. That is number 19 on the season, but certainly one of his biggest of the year, as he got the exact pitch he wanted and did not hesitate. Even though they won the series, we finally beat Seattle in a regular season game, and so much of that credit goes to Griffin Judd for an 8-inning, 3-hit performance. He has definitely carried our rotation with ace-level performances, while James Nanook started out slow, but after that, cover your eyes because there are a lot of snowflakes and no one else is doing good. I really don't want to imagine where we'd be right now if it wasn't for our offense, but even more specifically, LJ Morales and William Trout. While other guys like Bubba Thompson, Doug Forsyth, and Joe Adell are carrying their weight, Bobby Dahlbeck, who we just signed to a 3-year extension, is not performing up to his standard. On the bright side, we do have a pretty nice cushion in the wild card race, but obviously that is not what we're chasing. However, Seattle's division lead just grew to 3.5 games. We also just dropped a series to Colorado, who literally had the #1 pick last year, and now we're in danger of losing to another wild card hopeful in the Minnesota Twins, and they just bail us out with a wild throw. We have been gifted a second chance, and Bobby Dahlbeck, who I was just criticizing, comes through with a dribbler up the middle. Losing this game would not only set us back in the division, but also in the wild card race, so I'm very glad we just saved ourselves, and now LJ Morales, looking to walk it off, goes deep where it is caught. For just a second, I thought we won, but as you saw, he was just a few inches away from full satisfaction, and here is the go-ahead double in the 10th. That is Avi Tick, who just gave up the go-ahead run, and even though I just checked his stats a week ago, his ERA and his whip have both taken kind of a hit, so out of the games I played, this could be the first one where he actually cost us a win, but we just bailed him out. We were able to tie this game back up, and now Ryan Jensen holds it down, so we are closer than ever to this walk-off, and Blanco advances the winning run. Learning from my mistakes, I will not be going for the game-winning sacrifice bunt, but instead we're doing something a lot cooler, hitting this deep, and this one is finally over. We rebound from a series loss to Colorado with a signature win, but at the end of June, we are still behind the Mariners. I'm actually perfectly fine with this because the advantage with our team is we're so young that we're only going to get better over time, and honestly, right now, our offense has a lot of room to grow, which I'm very excited about. Moving forward, though, I certainly need to make a move in our rotation because Devin Smeltzer is not cutting it with a 6 ERA, and in the bullpen, it is the same story with Mike Baumann. Thankfully, there is one player who I haven't called up yet in Tristan Rodriguez, and even though he doesn't necessarily fit the high walks per 9 mold that I'm looking for, we really have no other options. I am going to pull the trigger, sending him up to the 40-man roster and the 26, and at this point, I really don't care what happens to Devin Smeltzer because he's been straight cheeks. I do consider this to be an upgraded rotation, but I think the biggest player we've taken for granted this season is not even a starter, but Jose Suarez, who's first out of the pen. He was one of the only free agent signings I made in the offseason, and it has been certainly worth it so far, and to make things even better, he's locked down for the next 5 years. It is time for the MLB draft, and while I do plan on taking Eduardo Velazquez at number 2, in the very slim chance that Greg Duke falls, he is absolutely my selection. After that, though, there's a lot of uncertainty, as this might be one of the worst position player classes I've ever seen, but in the second round, I plan on selecting Alberto Villa before taking really the only other good late round position option in Billy Schmidt in round 3. There's also a lot of discovery pitchers who I'm really banking on falling to the later rounds, but aside from that, we're really just taking a piss in the dark and hoping that we hit the bowl. No matter who the number 1 pick is, I'm happy, but it's gonna be Eduardo Velazquez. Are you serious? After missing out on all 3 of my favorite players in the first round, round, Greg Duke, who's probably gonna be like 85 overall, is not the #1 overall pick, and seriously, I cannot believe this. Obviously, I'm glad when it works out in my favor, but this game needs to fix their stuff, as not only is Velasquez the clear inferior player, but he's also 23 years old and has injury concerns. For our next pick though, Alberto Villa is not guaranteed to last until the next selection, so another starting pitcher might be our best option in that range, or maybe a closer. Sure enough, that's gonna have to be the plan because he goes number 12 to Cleveland, and if we've learned anything throughout this series, draft rank has no impact on where you're taken, and my options for pick 40 are really limited. Omar De Jesus is the #1 player on my board, and I know we have Avi Tick, but we could use another developmental guy at the closer position, so why not bring him in? I do feel like he's at least gonna be a good developmental guy, and lucky for us, my third pick is still available, and I'm not gonna waste any time taking Billy Schmidt, because this guy's one of the last position players I'd actually consider taking. After that though, my board is pretty thin, and even though Clinton Iverson won't have a high ceiling, I love that power from a shortstop, and we could use some more competition at that position. Unfortunately, my highest ranked discovery pitcher did go off the board early, and because I don't want to take that risk again, I'm bringing in Dustin Granger. That is going to leave 4 players left on the board in round 5, and after some consideration, I don't want to take another pitcher, so I think the right move here is left fielder Buster Barden, who at least has a pretty good chance of having good potential. Make no mistake, his floor is going to be very low, but given that we've taken a few pitchers over the years, I'm perfectly okay with it, and now we're ending our draft with another one. I just drafted 2 closers for maybe the first or second time ever, but like I say, every draft has its own strengths and weaknesses, and my job as the GM of this make-believe team is to stack the cards in our favor even in the worst drafts. We officially made it to the All-Star break, and I think this is the first year of the franchise that I'm actually interested in seeing who's representing us, as LJ Morales and William Trout both deserve to be there, but after that, it could really be anybody. If I had to take a guess, it's gonna be him, William Trout, Griffin Judd, and Avi Tick, but on second thought, what on earth happened to Avi? He was so good to start the year, but it seems he's fallen into a bit of a slump, but checking out the voting, it looks like he did just enough to make it in. Much to my surprise though, I am seeing no Griffin Judd, as sure enough, he has fallen out of the Cy Young race. It also looks like the same goes for LJ Morales and William Trout, so aside from LJ's race for Rookie of the Year, we may not have a single award winner. It's insane to me that William Trout's not just getting snubbed from the All-Star race, but looking at the numbers, every single player that came in front of him is not nearly as good. I guess it makes sense that the media bias is really not with Alaska, but Doug Forsyth makes the game instead, so clearly this is completely rigged as LJ Morales comes in third at least, but we had 3 All-Stars this season, and arguably 2 of them didn't even deserve it. After that, I'm really just trying to move on to the second half, but one thing worth noting beforehand is Tristan Rodriguez is completely killing it. He's only pitched in 2 games, but he's only given up 9 hits and 1 run in 15 innings, so there's a very good chance that he was the starting pitcher we needed all along. We better hope that's the case, because right now I'm looking at the trade block, and there are really no players worth bringing in. Casey Mize sounds great in theory, but his numbers this season really haven't been good, and it's the last year of his contract, so instead of overpaying for an average rental, I really feel like we should just move on. I still have a couple of weeks to decide if I'm gonna make a move at the deadline, but if I do, it probably won't be anything monumental, because even though there's plenty of ammunition in our farm system, I don't want to blow it up just for a mediocre rental. Our first game of the second half is against Houston, and their MVP frontrunner, Yordan Alvarez, may have just ruined our comeback attempt. We got lucky enough in the first half, so this is not the way I want to start the second, and if we keep this up, I might have to make a trade. Unfortunately, Houston would go on to sweep us, and I did not realize that would drop us to 4th in our division. That also means that we are out of the wild card race despite leading the AL West at a point, so even though we started the year with 2 MVP frontrunners, we are suddenly in danger of not making the playoffs, but we can redeem ourselves against the Rangers. Our backup shortstop, Nasim Nunez, just put us up by 3 runs, and even a guy who's not a home run hitter is gonna take advantage of that slider left right over the plate. Griffin Judd has to be disappointed that he got snubbed out of the All-Star game, but he's recovered nicely with a 3-run start, and while that's technically not a quality start, we'll take it against an offense like this. Just a reminder that they have Vlad Guerrero Jr., so no matter what the score is, we're very lucky to be in the lead. Avi Tick is in to close it out, and his season's been on a backslide for a little while now, and Vlad Jr. just went deep on him. him. I was ready to call him the best closer in baseball, but it's very clear he's still young and has a long way to go. At least he's gonna get another save while Griffin Judd gets a big win. So now we're trying to win our first series of the second half, but we're trailing by 1 run. One player who's really impressed this year is Jose Suarez, and while he's been really good in this long reliever role, I might even give him another run at being a starter just because his ceiling is there. Suarez is able to get us out of the inning alive, so that gives us a chance to put the 1 run we need on the board. There is only one away with the tying run on first, but unfortunately that's not going to drop, and for just a split second, I thought it was going to, as this ground out ends another loss. Just like that, we've lost 8 of our last 10 games. So just like I said earlier, I feel like I have to make a move, and I can admit that my biggest free agent signing of last offseason in Kobe Allard did not pay off. He's regressing like crazy, and he has an ERA over 5, so I'm shipping him to the Padres for pretty much nothing. That clears up a roster spot for us to make a big move for Jairo Iriarte from the White Sox, and even though he will not be cheap, costing us 3 B potential prospects, it is so worth it. In a full season of starting, he has a 3.21 ERA and a 1.2 whip, and because Chicago is not going to be good for a long time, they're fully willing to sell him. Jairo's going to immediately become our number 3, and with B potential, he still has a lot of room to grow, along with 6 years of control. There is no doubt that was a desperation move, but now my question is it going to help our season? Because before the All-Star break, we were talking about winning this division, and now we might not even make the playoffs. We are in the final game of a split series against the Cubs, and after William Trout's home run, we're up by 1, and with runners at the corners, there's a chance to add even more where that came from, but Nasim Nunez is gonna do even more than I expected. What a clutch home run to deep center field, and as expected, we'd go on to win that game, but it's also worth noting that that was a huge win for Jairo Iriarte, who made his first start. As you can see, entering August, we are still trying to recover, but for now, I don't really care about that because it's time to view our draft picks. Honestly, this might have been one of the thinnest draft classes I've ever seen from top to bottom, so really all I need is for Greg Duke to come out as good as we think he's gonna be, because the fact that he fell to us at number 2 could make the draft on its own. Without further ado, it is time to reveal our cards. He has 92 potential with an 87 overall, which I think might be the highest I've ever seen. I was expecting a mid-80s potential with a low 80s overall, but this is so much better, and I think without question, he's going to be a day 1 starter next season. He is the best non-99 potential pitching prospect I have ever seen, and that 95K per 9 is going to be so fun next year. I knew that Duke was going to make or break our class, but I never expected him to be a total god, and as for the rest of our class, it certainly doesn't look bad, but it's not what we're used to. I am very excited about Omar De Jesus because we need more developmental guys in our bullpen, and while he's certainly not going to be pro ready for a very long time, it's nice to know we're going to have an option when Avi Tick probably hits free agency. I am really disappointed in Billy Schmidt because I thought he was going to be a much higher potential than 84, just because our scouts were saying he was the 23rd ranked player in the class, and while he's definitely an okay player, I feel like this is kind of a miss. Unlike Schmidt though, I think we're getting exactly what we expected in Clinton Iverson, who comes in with pretty low potential, but also a very high floor, which makes him good trade bait. However, I do think it's worth mentioning that Jose Barrero's kind of having a down year, while his backup option, Nasim Nunez, doesn't seem to be much better, so while trading Iverson down the line might be the most likely scenario, with power in the 60s, I'm inclined to give him a shot. Then in round 5, we took Buster Barden, who is one of the only good position players in this entire class, and he's gonna take a while to develop, but I'm still glad we pulled the trigger on a potential before ending the draft with another closing pitcher who has a very high floor and also a decent ceiling at 81. Overall, Greg Duke alone makes this a very good draft, but even if you take him away, I still feel like we did a very good job given the circumstances. We're starting out August taking on the Angels, but they just swept us, so our season continues to fall apart, and now we're taking on the Rays in Tropicana Park. This is the first time of the year that we've been under 500, as we have crashed down to earth in this second half, and all that tells me is we relied way too much on unsustainable performances from guys like William Trout. There was a time when him and LJ Morales were the MVP frontrunners, while Griffin Judd seemed like the runaway Cy Young favorite, and don't get me wrong, I'm so thankful to have all of those players, but they're still very young. If we want to make the playoffs, we need to get some of that early season magic back, and at least that victory in Tampa Bay's house is going to help, along with the series sweep. However, now we're behind against a very good Baltimore team, and they're a team that we could see again if we do make the playoffs, and Joe Adele is gonna give them something to play for. That is embarrassing in their home park. He just pulled a 9th inning go-ahead home run, and I don't want to jinx anything, but we're so back. We're relying on Avi Tick to close a signature win, and as you guys know, things have been rough for him lately, but lucky for us, today he woke up choosing to be his old self as we are able to get the win, and then another one gives us our 5th in a row. The Polar Bears are clawing back in this loaded wildcard race, but if they're gonna earn a spot, they have to overcome a pretty tough schedule the rest of the year. There is nothing that could boost our confidence than sweeping a very loaded team, and a sacrifice fly just broke the tie before Dairon Blanco scores another one, going into opposite field for a double as the go-ahead run scores, but they're waving another one around. I don't know what they're thinking. He's thrown out. That is very aggressive base running as there is a solo shot, so even though we still have the lead, I know this offense can put up a bunch of runs at any time. However, with 2 away, we get runners at the corners, so we may be able to take the lead, but Gunnar Henderson just made the play of his life. I cannot believe that one snuck through the infield, but lucky for us, our bullpen is holding them down. So just like last game, it's gonna come down to Mr. Tick unless Joe Adele does exactly what he did last time, pulling this into left field and once again embarrassing Baltimore. We signed Adele in our first offseason ever, but even though he's been one of our most consistent players, his role this season was sort of in question because of LJ Morales. However, Joe never went away, becoming our starting center fielder, and for whatever reason, he always seems to come up in big moments, helping us win our 6th game in a row. Not only did he seal the game at the very end, but he also hit another home run earlier on to give him a very nice performance. And all I can say is teams better adjust their rear view mirrors because our win streak is gonna put us right on their tails. After another sweep against Tampa, our win streak is at 12 games, but right now it's in danger of being ended by a Garrett Cole shutout. The reason I'm showing this is to prove that good pitching can beat even the hottest teams, and even though that was the exact reason that I gave up a ton to get Jairo Iriarte, I feel like Griffin Judd's the only one we can always rely on right now. Then again, there's very little you can do when you're the cheapest franchise in league history, so if we do make the playoffs, I'm gonna be very impressed. In case you needed an update, our payroll this season is only $22 million, and that even comes after a 3-year extension to Bobby Dahlbeck, which in hindsight cost absolutely nothing. At least for me, the most fun thing about this series is definitely building a team using a very extremist view of Moneyball, and I know on this channel I've done a lot of realistic rebuilds, but ironically, I think these very unrealistic ones where I challenge myself way too much are the most rewarding. We are looking for revenge just 1 game after New York broke our win streak, and Bubba Thompson goes up the middle to break a 0-0 tie. That gives Avi Tick another chance to improve his year, and I don't think there's any coincidence that he's playing much better now that his team's doing well, as this entire squad has a lot of confidence, and just like that, they are back in the wild card. Winning the rest of the series would really help us out, but that's not gonna happen. And then in our very next series, we fell short against a good Atlanta team. This is one of the streakiest baseball teams I've ever seen, and that is especially evident when looking at our player stats, as I think we have just as many guys on cold streaks as we do on hot streaks. At the beginning of the year, it really looked like William Trout was gonna run away as one of the best first basemen in all of baseball, and while he's still been a very good player, his second half does not even compare to his first half. It is the same story for guys like Bobby Dahlbeck, Doug Forsyth, and even our closer Avi Tick, as even after a 12-game winning streak, we are still 23rd in the league in batting average, and even more concerningly, we might lose to the White Sox. Dropping a series to the worst team in baseball right after going on a massive win streak would be the most fringe playoff thing ever, but Jose Barrero's gonna bail us out with a deep home run. Giving us a fastball right down the middle was certainly not the best idea, so this one's gonna be decided in extra innings, and our reliever Andrew Moore is having a great time. He just collected his second strikeout, but now Brandon Drury caught him on a bad pitch, which he drives into right center field. The great game of baseball always finds a way to make me eat my words, so once again, our backs are up against the wall, but after Bubba Thompson stole third, we are easily able to drive him in. A late season game against Chicago should not be as important as it is, but here we are, as LJ Morales just got himself in scoring position, and just 1 pitch later, we're able to walk him off. That was way more dramatic than it needed to be, but nonetheless, it's still a victory, and here we are entering September. Our division is so loaded this season season that even though we're in 4th place, we're in position to make the playoffs. But as I mentioned, our schedule is not going to make this easy as we're already facing our first big test, down 2 against LA, but Dairon Blanco changes that very quickly. That is such a clutch play with 2 outs, and then William Trout puts this game away, as the Dodgers may have fought back, but they couldn't overcome a 7-run inning. That is a series win against one of the best teams in baseball, but next up we have the Texas Rangers, who may be last in the division, but are certainly no slouches. They just broke a 7th inning tie, and now Josh Young reads the slider beautifully and smashes it over the fence. We are now relying on another rally just like the one we pulled off in the Dodgers series, as we just scored 1 with 1 away, and here's LJ Morales who grounds to Seager, who's gonna throw, and the double play is not in time. LJ barely beats that out, but it scores another run. So now it's a 1-run game, and Locklear against a full count dribbles this up the middle, and that ties the game. Right now, the Polar Bears are scratching and clawing to make their first playoff appearance ever, and starting the month with series victories over the Dodgers and the Rangers would be a great way to get there, as they're back in extra innings but give up a run. I'm a bit nervous, but as we know, these guys really like hitting from behind, but Trout hit it right to Seager, so we're down to our last out. It is time for our superstar LJ Morales to be the hero, but that's a swing and miss. So after our rally against LA, we lose to Texas, and at this point in the year, every single loss makes a huge difference. I am really doubting our chances to make the postseason, as we're tied for the 3rd spot, but the huge caveat is we're playing Seattle twice before the end of the year. These are hands down the most important games of the season, but after losing the first 2 games, we're just trying to avoid the sweep. While our season certainly is not over if we lose this game, a sweep would be completely demoralizing, and as a Mariners fan myself, I've gotten so used to being on the edge of the wild card race and not seeing them get in. They just scored 2 runs in the bottom of the 8th, which could very well end us, but it seems their all-star closers having a bit of trouble. The tying run is on 3rd base, but former Mariner Tyler Locklear gets underneath this one, so the very first team we beat in this video has ended up being the biggest problem. Our playoff chances must have been like 90% in June, but they've completely fallen off a cliff, as we may not be eliminated yet, but the writing is certainly on the wall. After such a promising start to the year, we finished 83-79 despite leading this stacked division for a long time, and I think the most painful thing about it is we finished 2 games out of the wild card. For a long while, we had 2 players in front of Yordan Alvarez for the MVP, and he ended up winning the Triple Crown, and amazingly, that is his 3rd straight MVP. Besides their payroll and financial restrictions, I think this team's biggest problem is they're just too young and too undeveloped to play 162 straight games. But if there was any positive for us at all, it's that LJ Morales won Rookie of the Year, which is gonna net us a 1st-round draft pick next year. If one thing's for certain though, we are just getting started, and I would really bet everything that I have that we improve off of this year. I already mentioned Morales, but him and Trout carried our offense for pretty much the entire season, and I feel like one of the biggest reasons we didn't make the playoffs this season is because Bobby Dahlbeck kind of fell off, and Doug Forsyth did not improve off of last year. I do think both of those players are gonna bounce back last season, but aside from that, on the pitching side of things, we're gonna get a full season from Tristan Rodriguez and Jairo Iriarte, and hopefully trim some of this fat off in the offseason. Without a doubt, the player who suffered most from a second half collapse was James Nanook, and if you remember, he came into this season as our number 2 starter, and that is certainly not gonna happen next year. I know this season was full of ups and downs, but you guys have to remember that we still improved our record by 14 games, which was the exact same amount we improved by from 2025 to 26. So given the amount of talent we have and how much we've improved, we need the right director for this ship, and Dave Roberts is the perfect fit. I'm gonna make a small trade in the offseason, getting the starting pitcher from the Rays, who has a very good walks per 9, in exchange for one of the first breakout players of this series in Jamison Hanna, who could use a change of scenery. I'm also gonna package in another pitching prospect, and I feel like that trade is pretty reasonable. As always, given our small market, there's really not much we can do in free agency, but there is one player I think we might be able to afford, and that is Mike Soroka. I'm gonna offer him a 5-year deal, and given the state of our team, I am perfectly happy dumping our entire free agent budget into one guy. Getting quality starters has been our biggest weakness, so getting Mike Soroka and Greg Duke on the team next year is such a huge deal, as Duke especially just said move over Griffin Judd, there's a new ace in town, and I'm excited to see how that competition works out in the next episode. Thank you all for staying supportive of this series, especially as we get into the very bland MLB offseason. Remember to submit your player names below if you want a chance to name a guy like Greg Duke. And as always, drop a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and click right here to see more of my content.